I was yeah, sorry I'm late. I was just preparing some food.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Makes sense. It's been really busy for some people and really slow for others. So it's kind of funny like that. But yeah, I think similar to the past two meetups, we're just kind of open topic for right now. It didn't
Mhm.
seem like anybody had any like pressing things that they wanted to talk about. So I think kind of leaving it open helps. So how have things been with you?
They're good. And being a junior in charge of a whole website is quite challenging. It's just it's very hard, honestly. There's a lot of things that you do very slowly and on time. Like you do realize that you are making the stuff work, but you are creating such technical depth. Like you're not doing it correctly. You know you're hard coding some stuff in there, but there's a deadline, so it's hard. I have now a partner now in my at work, and she knows a lot more of Drupal, so she is has been quite the help. But still, like it's a big project that we're doing, and it sometimes I feel like I'm on my own.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
actually, oh, I was just gonna say that this group has been so good because I met this guy and Andrew
yeah.
and Nico, I think his name is, and he told me just ping me up, and I did, and he actually helped me like
Yeah.
to resolve an issue and everything. So.
That's how a lot of the Drupal community is. That's actually how a lot of open source communities tend to be as well. But Drupal is quite exceptional in that sense, where especially like on Slack, if you get to know certain people who are putting themselves out there, they really do mean it. And they'll let you know if they're not available, which of course all of us are unavailable at some point. But I think what happens is when you're new and folks help you, you feel like you kind of owe it back to the community, the like pay it forward sort of thing. But this is like the opposite of that. It's happening to you. And then eventually you get farther in your career and you gain some experience. Once you hit that point of experience, other new people are entering, and then you feel obliged to help them. And it just continues this cycle. It's a really beautiful thing to actually watch. Um, but I think your fears about hard coding things are really well founded. That is one of the things that early in anybody's Drupal career, mine's no exception. You learn, can I or should I are two very different things. Like I can absolutely go into core and change any code I want. I can do that. But if I need to deploy an update, that change will instantly go away. And sometimes that's fine. But as soon as you understand like Composer manages things, and when you do updates, Composer will just write over that stuff. You can actually do things like create a patch and tell Composer to employ that patch. So if it tries to do an update, it can re-roll a patch and whatnot, which can break. So it's one of those caveat emptor, like it's your responsibility to test things locally beforehand. But I think that's the workflow that everybody really needs to get used to is if you're just doing everything on a live server, which is exactly how everybody used to do things with websites. You might have backups if you're wise. Uh, then it's okay to be reckless if you know that you can undo. But I'm sure many a developer has done something where they've overwritten something and they didn't have a recent database backup, and then you kind of have to like patch something together to fix a small moment in time can create so much work. So, with that said, I think it is valuable for you to have somebody that you can talk to if you're just unsure about things. But if you don't have somebody to talk to and you still need to do something, just do it on your local, test it, see how it goes. Because no matter what, you can always roll that back and you're not doing anything on a live site. Um, but Drupal is built in such a way where you can override and extend in your own modules and themes. So really, you should never be in a situation where you have to change core, where you have to change a contrib module or anything like that. So that's like the ethos, the way to really approach things.
For sure. Yeah, I remember it's funny that you said that about Composer. I remember I was changing code directly in a contrib module, and then I got like the latest version of that module, and then it went away. So
Yeah.
what I ended up doing, so I just forked the module basically. I
Mhm.
just copy it and say, okay, my contrib module, and I put the changes that I needed because I don't know how to make patches, for example. That is a
Right.
good thing that you mentioned because I completely forgot about that, and I'm gonna learn about it. Um, yeah, so I had to create an own module that basically recreates this other module in this
Mhm.
state that I needed with the code changes that I have implemented. Instead of doing all of that work, I should have just made a patch and even submit a patch for the
Yeah.
community, right?
Yeah, and that is the way. But even if you don't have time to submit a patch in an issue queue, sometimes just having a local patch for yourself. A lot of times, if a module changes, it's either going to address the issue you identified yourself because somebody else has potentially reported it as well, and always check the issue queue for a problem.
Hmm.
Now, if it's not so much addressing an actual error, maybe you're changing the functionality or changing a label of something, so something like that. Um, that's a good time to think about either extending it in your own custom module or checking the issue queue or contributing back when you can. But if it's just something in a pinch, these little things add up though. Like if you have lots of little tweaks and band-aid fixes and stuff like that, eventually it becomes very difficult to manage, whether it's yourself or anybody else. So it should be like a last resort. Like the website is down, this is the only way to get it back up and running.
Hmm.
And then you owe it to yourself that week to figure out how to avoid the band-aid fix. Um, but if it's crisis mode, I've definitely had plenty of e-commerce sites where like you are literally not making money if the site's not operational. Um,
Yeah,
where you just have to make critical decisions like that. But in the background, you're working on a better solution. And working agency life, everything is very thin margins, very low amount of effort to get what you can get done for certain types of clients
right.
or departments with small budgets. But yeah, I actually just started a WordPress project, just helping somebody out, updating plugins, stuff like that. And it's been years since I've really worked with WordPress. But honestly, like if I look at it from two perspectives. One, I've done this stuff before, and that's where I get some confidence. And two, if I'm working on a local environment, if I break something, it's of no consequence. I can just roll back to a previous Git commit or old version of the database.
Hmm.
So I think finding those sort of moments where you can give yourself a little confidence is a really good thing.
For sure. Yeah, actually in our development setup, we do have like a dev like local stage, and then we commit to a remote server where we test, and then we have another uh staging environment which is pre-production basically, and then we
Yeah.
do go to production. Like it's like very safe. Although, to be honest with you, we do not follow like the best standards. Even though we have this robust infrastructure or whatever, we don't use it the best we can. But we're changing that.
And I think it's good to be gentle with yourself. There's having caution and backup systems and stuff like that. You know that backups are important and whatnot, and you know not to make live changes on the
Mhm.
website sort of thing without testing them. But anything in between, like there's a bit of a gray zone there. I think every developer who's ever worked on these sort of sites has had that moment where maybe they didn't go through the full deployment workflow. Maybe they didn't check their code with a linter or something like that. And honestly, I'm I've worked on a lot of small websites where those sort of workflows are just too big. They take too long. So it's good to find a proportionate amount of effort for what's appropriate to add value with a degree of caution. So there's a lot more of a spectrum of how you can operate as opposed to here's the right way versus the wrong way.
Right. Um, you mentioned earlier WordPress, and I'm just curious, like, how different do you find WordPress, and Drupal?
Um, Personally, I find them quite a bit different. I think earlier Drupal was a bit more akin to WordPress in the sense of how it's put together. It's a lot more procedural code. It doesn't mean that you can't use object-oriented code, but I feel like structurally, WordPress reminds me a lot more of like Drupal 7 and before, where things were um, a bit more approachable by amateur programmers, people who aren't trying to build large scale APIs or whatnot. And that's not to say that APIs don't serve a purpose in WordPress; they most certainly do. It's just to get things done, it's not nearly as essential. It's a bit more display focused. And I think the other obvious thing is Drupal is much more engineered for large scale data structures and scaling than WordPress. WordPress just doesn't like custom post types, things like that are nowhere near as robust as the content types and taxonomy and menu systems that Drupal has. They're much more nicely abstracted data structures, but they're just different flavors. Honestly, when I first started my endeavors into content management systems, I looked at a lot of them. There were so many in the landscape. It's like every agency was making their own CMS back in the like mid 2000s. And they weren't wrong to consider that. I mean, prior to that, it was like static HTML, and then we had like includes, so you could have a common header and a common footer, or some sort of reusable elements. And it just evolved as we were like, we don't want to repeat these things, so things just started to grow and grow. And then instead of being file based, then it started to become database based. um, so I think we've had a lot of these evolutions, and it's really funny to see some parts of that come full circle with like static HTML site generators that a CMS feeds for performance, which again makes sense if you just have a static site. Um, when I first started off, I looked at things like Joomla, and I looked at WordPress, and I looked at Drupal. And I worked on a few different things for education and healthcare and e-commerce. So Drupal at the time that I got started was Drupal 6 had just come out. Um, and then after working for Johns Hopkins is actually who I mostly worked on a few Drupal websites, the hospital, not the university. And I built an education portal that integrated with an LMS, a learning management system, to do coursework for doctors and professors. I actually helped with the production of a lot of those courses too, so like filming and putting together things. So that taught me quite a bit about not only how to build a site that was public facing with content, but also to have e-commerce for purchasing things in a completely different system to give people access to things. So that was really interesting. But I really didn't like Joomla. It was really clunky. WordPress it has its place, but from a scale standpoint, I love really complicated data structures, and Drupal really satisfies that. Hey, Mike, how's it going? Did you go to bad camp?
Yes, me. I didn't.
Yeah, I know a few people did. I think Bob went there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bob's all over the place. I'm
Yeah.
gonna see him in Portland. I was debating whether or not I wanted to go. Um, but being a freelance contractor, it's good to have some networking time, some FaceTime with folks. But yeah. What's been going on in your world, Mike?
Oh, not much. The usual.
Yep. Projects grinding away.
Yeah, yeah. Drupals need more work.
Sure.
I do have to do a session for the Pacific Northwest Drupal Summit, so I have like what 18 days now to actually create it. So I have to do that. Um,
Is it based on a speech that you gave previously, or is this all brand new stuff?
I mean, most of it's based on stuff that I've been doing in terms of like, it's about proper heading structure and like setting up Drupal so to ensure proper heading structure when the users are adding content.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and some of the methods are pretty traditional and straightforward, but I am looking at some layout builder stuff, which I don't usually use. And then also I'm going to try to look at experience builder and see if there's any way to get that to ensure proper heading structures.
Or
I mean,
is
I know that isn't like baked into it in any way, but like, there probably is a way to like create components that have the proper heading structures. And then I think there should be a way to say what components can go inside of other components, but I'm not sure.
so
I have to look into that.
I always have that bone to pick of people using the word header and heading interchangeably because they just
Oh, did I say header? I
aren't.
meant
No,
heading.
no, no, you
Okay.
didn't. You
Okay.
didn't. But I'm definitely pointing that out as one of those peeves because they're structurally two different things. And I also see that you or I'm hearing that you have a bit of a sensitivity of like what the level is. So like kind of the semantic structure, the document outline, if you will. Like you have one H1 in a web page, then you have H2s, and then under H2s, you don't jump to H4 just because you like the font.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
you really should have an H3 under that. And if it's a person putting content in a WYSIWYG, that's a training issue. And that helps with accessibility. And I think we all recognize that. But you had a good point.
An accessibility issue. Just if you're navigating the page and try by heading and stuff like that, making
Yeah.
sure that there's proper structure is important.
Yeah, for
So
sure. But you bring up a good point though. If you have components that are nesting, or if sometimes they have a parent, sometimes they don't, then you run into that conundrum of how does it know what heading level to use?
yeah,
So is that
and
what you're going to cover in the presentation that you're talking about?
I mean partly. I mean mostly I'm just going to describe how I set it up using like paragraphs and stuff, or just like you know making sure that different templates have the proper thing and just covering stuff like hey like if you set it up so your paragraphs you have like a bunch of different types of sections and that each one of those sections should have an explicit heading field that you have to enter
Yeah.
and that if your client wants you can have like a checkbox to visually hide the header
Yeah.
or the heading sorry no messing it up you can visually hide the heading um but it needs to be there for accessibility purposes.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
And
basically
and
a lot.
SEO and things like
Yeah,
that too. Yeah.
I don't really care about that, but oh yeah, so the AIs can properly parse your page. Yes.
Well, I mean, your point about accessibility is really important, but I think it's also usability as a whole.
Yeah,
Like if I had a page that was just paragraph after paragraph after paragraph with no delineation of thought, then it's just a fire hose of information. But people, as we all know, they don't tend to actually read long pages. They skim, and those headings are waypoints. They're
yeah,
markers for them to try to find what they're looking for. And the machines do the same thing. They can use the headings as waypoints to try to find, okay, what am I trying to answer? So whether that's AI or SEO or literally anything else trying to scrape a page.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that session. That sounds like a again a bone to pick sort of thing. It reminds me, I worked on a topic idea the other day just because I'm doing so many sales proposals with Calamuna. The importance of user experience in sales proposals. This is like the first
Hmm.
touch point that a lot of people are going to have with an organization. How easy is it to read? The most common thing is excessive superlatives or run on sentences. long chains of prepositional phrases, burying the lead of what you're saying because you want to sound salesy, I guess. And making things clear and easy to understand isn't just about the web pages that we build. It's also about the other documents that we create. But yeah, bones to pick. Well, cool. Looking forward to that.
It's interesting that you guys have been mentioning accessibility because that's what I've been working on now. On the we're like redesigning the menu, and our menu previously you could not like navigate with the keyboard properly, right? And now I am implementing that. I have no idea how to do that. I'm learning.
Mhm.
Um, and I was just curious, like where could I get like best practices for accessibility? Like what is or are there standards that I can
Yeah.
search for?
Yeah, so I would approach it from two directions. One is the common standard itself, which some people pronounce WCAG or WCAG. That is an international standard, and a lot of legal things point to it. So Section 508 is a government related standard. So if you get federal funding in the US, you're obligated to follow Section 508. Some people call it ADA compliance, even though that's a little bit of a misnomer as far as I'm concerned. It's really just if you have a public facing site, it needs to be accessible by all people, and how that's litigated has been the thing that's really been deciding how people react to things. So WCAG isn't necessarily the easiest thing to read. It's not quick by any measure, but it is good to sit down and just read it. Read it at least once, and then when you have time, after it kind of digests for a little while, read it again. But don't just approach accessibility from that perspective because that's not very empathetic. Think about the types of disabilities or impairments that people have. And sometimes they're permanent, like I could be born blind, or sometimes they're temporary, like I broke my arm. It'll heal, but I don't have the use of my arm temporarily. So I need some sort of accommodation. Or somebody's distracted because they're making food and they just need to find the information on the page. They don't want to fuss through a bunch of stuff. So there's a lot of examples like that, but it's really about developing empathy and compassion for the different states that humans experience technology. And there are some certifications. Some of them are free, some of them cost a very little bit of money, but I would actually start there because a certification basically is something that you can put on your resume. It is a streamlined coursework and it will show people that you've at least gone through the process, but it kind of pushes you through that. Like, and here's why you need alt text. Here's why ARIA applies outside of that, or here's why you need a skip navigation option that's hidden for screen readers to just get right to the content. Here's why color contrast is important. Here's why font sizes are important. Here's why when you have any sort of video or audio, you need to have alternatives for people who can't experience that. And a lot of it, like when it's presented to you that way, it seems like it would be common sense. But when you're a programmer or a designer, you're not going to naturally think about it until you've been conditioned to think that way. And it will seem laborious to try to incorporate that into your style sheets and your page templates and components and things like that. But once you get in the habit, like including headings for breaking up not only your document structure but different things on your page, then you start to notice how other people have applied that in the things that have already been built, and then you're starting to get on that best practices train. Um, Personally, I love doing accessibility audits as well. So that's one of the services that as a freelance contractor I provide. But that is a great way to also learn. So I'd call that a third way to learn. There's one that's built in with Lighthouse that you can use. There's a few more, like I think DQ has one, and they also do coursework. I think Axe was another. There's quite a few accessibility tools. They change over time, but I always tell people accessibility tools are good to attempt to find issues, There will be false positives, there will be false negatives with any testing tool you have, and knowing how to navigate that's important. But then once you have that list, you work on mitigating those issues. And then once things come up clean, aside from false positives, then you're in better shape and you know what a good accessible page looks like. So test it on a page that you know should be accessible, that, you know, a government page or something like that typically leans in that direction, or a hospital page, things like that. And then also try it on your own website, see how they stack up, see where it's yelling at you, and then compare kind of the results to figure out like, okay, here's where I can improve. And don't feel compelled to just go fix everything. Just sit with it for a while, understand why it would complain about certain things.
All right. Thank you. I'll start that there then with the WCAG,
Yep.
and yeah, just find a course or a certification as well
Yeah.
for
Yeah. I can pull up the one that I did. I think I did one with DQ as well. Um, the one I did was actually robust, but not difficult, if that makes any sense. Let's see, what was it? It was yeah, it was with actually with the IXDF. So that's the I think that's the International Design Foundation, if I'm recalling that correctly. And WCAG changes over time. We're currently on version 2.2. The last time it changed was a few years ago. And it's usually just little things that change, like how logins are handled or how form elements are handled and stuff like that. But it's good to be aware of when those changes are coming along. So here, I'll put this in. I'll get rid of your query string that wants to get a referral from me. And I'll just put this in the chat just so you can see the course that I'm talking about. So this is just accessibility, how to design for all. There's a concept called universal design. And the idea here is if you build something, you attempt to build it for everyone. So if I have an automatic door on my building, I'm not just building it for someone in a wheelchair. Everybody can use that. Or if I have a ramp instead of stairs, you don't have to have a wheelchair to benefit from a ramp. You just walk up the ramp. So if you're always designing websites with everybody in mind, then that's the concept of universal design. And some of this stuff comes from the Nielsen Norman Group. So it's usually abbreviated NNG. But Nielsen Norman Group does a lot of like user experience related stuff. If you want a fun design book to read, I'm dead serious about this. There's a book called The Design of Everyday Things. And a lot of designers will read it like in college or whatever, but it's really whimsical and fun. Don Norman used to work with Apple as a designer, and he's one of the people that gave rise to the idea of universal design. So he's a very human focused person. Um, but I think if you take personal time to do like professional development or whatnot, and read things like that and do coursework like this, you get a lot closer to the heart of what accessibility is. It's not just alt text and contrast and fonts. It's there's a purpose behind it all. So best practices are like, here's the semantic markup that you'll want to consider, but it's also being thoughtful beyond that. So it's the, you know, it's not common sense, because if so, then everybody would be doing it. It's more a matter of just being compassionate about the design and the code that you're putting into the world. And it takes practice. I'm going to pull up that book too. Yep, it just comes right up. And I'll use the Wikipedia link so that way it's a little bit more friendly for people who don't want to give Jeff Bezos money. And also, the Nielsen Norman Group is actually, they have a really good like social media presence too. So like whatever social media platforms you're on, they probably have like videos or posts or something. I know they do on like LinkedIn. Um, but yeah, they actually have a lot of really good content. I was a developer for about 16 to 18 years professionally. And then I started shifting into things like project management and design, especially because with an engineering background, I loved information architecture. But then you start to realize, hey, these machines, these interfaces, we're building them for humans. Can we be more thoughtful about the human that's using them? Because how many times have you used an app or a website and you just pissed at it? And there is no install the accessibility plugin or install the UX plugin to make it all better. It that I always tell people that's sort of like going to a hotel and saying, I'm going to make it all better by painting the walls green. That's not how you do it. You have to talk to the customers and figure out that, oh, the pool was absolutely filthy or the concierge was rude. And websites are no different in that regard. But yeah, yeah, I can talk about this stuff endlessly. Um, a few
No, yeah,
books.
this is something that interests me a lot. And it just baffles me that it's not like something common. Like that's why I asked, like, are there like, is there a common practice? Is there like something that you
Yeah.
guys do? Like this is should be common knowledge. Like this is something that should be easy, you know? Like, oh yeah, this is how you do a for loop. Oh yeah, this no, like it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, all programming language structures tend to evolve a little bit over time, but they're the base ideas, the conditionals, the looping structures, and why those things tend to change is usually because people are trying to work faster or try to do something more efficiently. One of my favorite courses back in college was a calculus course, but it was a specialized one. It was about algorithm efficiency, the big O concepts, things like that. So basically, you would measure how efficient your functions actually were and consider ways to rewrite them. And I almost feel like in most programming, that's kind of like, I don't want to call it a dying art. That's sort of like calling something a game changer, which is just obnoxious. Uh, I think it's more something that if you absolutely need to make something hyper performant, you hire engineers that are really good at that type of thing. But most people aren't thinking about algorithm efficiency other than, okay, is this a sloppy piece of code? It's pretty obvious if it is. If not, then it it's something that can be refactored later if it's absolutely necessary. I think to your point earlier, though, sometimes you do what's necessary to get the result, and then you can always come back. And technical debt is very real. We all know when we're creating it, and we're all very quick to forget about it. it's it can feel like a point of shame, but I think it's something that sometimes you have to wear as just a wart that you develop along the way.
I wouldn't say that everyone knows what they're creating it, because there's a lot of people out there who don't realize they're creating it. But
Yeah,
and
maybe I
based
give a little too much credit on the like self shame and imposter syndrome thing that I feel like everybody experiences, but maybe not.
if people knew what technical debt was and how it's created and things like that, we'd have a lot less AI coding. Uh,
There's the get things done, and then there's the get things done well, and the
yeah.
chasm between the two can be absolutely enormous. But that's also a moving target. Like you have changes in how things, best practices aren't permanent, for example. And interfaces change. So you might have one version of an API today that works differently in a few weeks. There's a new release, and then you have to optimize for that connectivity.
Wow. Oh, that is unfortunate. The World Wide Web Consortium has unveiled a new logo.
Like in a good way.
No, no, definitely not.
The
Um,
WC3,
yeah.
3C.
I can share it. I
Oh,
mean,
interesting.
it's not like It only just sort of looks like a penis and testicles.
Oh,
And it's only the one half of it. I mean, the whole thing isn't a penis, but just part of it's a penis.
I'll admit the old logo did look like something from the 90s,
Oh,
but the new one just looks like it blends in with the design of everything. It was really funny. I saw some random thing about like all fast food restaurants have gone for this like new modern design look from an architectural standpoint. I'm like, that's how everything works. Everything is just a trend, and then a lot of people imitate, and then the next new thing comes along. I think it's really funny that Apple has come back to the glassy design that they had adopted back when OS 10 first came out, around the time of those clear Macs and yeah, that time's a flat circle sort of thing. I'm guessing it's the WC3. The three is supposed to look a little bit like a heart, but yeah, that's a little suggestive. I'm not putting on the screen. Somebody can go look at it for themselves.
I'm looking at it.
Um, uh, so, Andres, are you familiar with the WC3?
Sort of. I have encountered some of their articles while
Mhm.
looking for accessibility stuff as well. Or not accessibility, but I am familiar.
So standards were made a long while ago and kind of put in this group's hands for things like HTML and CSS and a lot of other things. So if you're ever curious about like how does this markup get defined, how does it evolve, this is the group that does that. So if you're ever curious like when's the next change, this is the group to watch. There are a lot of
Are they
standards.
are they the ones that created HTML and like
Oh
keep it
no,
up? No?
they keep it up, yes. They take a lot of input from the community, so they're just more of like a central hub, if you will,
Hmm.
for the standards. But I mean, the whole community helps drive that. So Mozilla might have a huge influence. Microsoft might have a huge influence, and a lot of times it's the browsers themselves that are like, "Here's something that I want to support for reasons."
Right.
But they definitely didn't make HTML. HTML was made far before they existed, from my understanding. But if you're ever curious, looking at the history of HTML, like what did the original markup actually look like? That that would be a fun, at least from my perspective, a fun thing
Well,
to
it's pretty
research.
straightforward. It says white and black, and um,
Like the big evolution was the development of hyperlinks.
there you go. The first website. Where's the chat.
Oh,
I don't know, it's
CERN.
the first website. Yeah, so I mean, it just looked like
The first website was in Switzerland?
yeah.
Wow, interesting. I thought it would be like in the States.
No,
Oh, yeah, the U.S. likes to claim a lot of things.
Interesting. Well, it is pretty efficient. It just loaded immediately in my screen, so I'll
Yeah,
give it that.
like that goes back to what we were saying earlier. Like everything used to just be static HTML, and eventually you had reusable things and you had includes, and it just grew from there.
Um, I have a question.
Mhm.
I don't know if you ever, any of you have been in this situation where there's a bunch of hard-coded links in your website, and they are all over the like content types and body and all of that, and you want to replace them, of course. Maybe you're doing a domain change, name or whatever. Um, is there a tool in Drupal to like search? I know there's search and replace, but that is not like it doesn't work basically. Is there like a better tool than that?
I know how I would approach it, but I'm curious, Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, I missed the question. I was busy looking at the logo.
If
Um,
uh if you had a bunch if you were changing the domain of your website or just wanted to get rid of all like absolute links with the domain in it, maybe switch them to relative links or something like that. How would you do that in Drupal?
I mean, Drupal does it automatically.
Like
Like
in content, if you were to put like example.com slash whatever and
of
you
your
wanted
own
to
site.
yeah, internal links and you wanted to change the domain to something different or
Well, I mean, okay, I mean, you just remove it and start with the slash when you're adding the links.
but
Just
how
always.
how would you what but say for example you already have a site and they already have a ton of links that you want to change. I think that's his question.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just looking to, I have shit, how do we do this?
I would just do a database
No, no, no,
operation.
no. Did we use the regex text replace module? We did a regex text replace that when it goes to display um, te formatted text on the page, it runs this filter on it, and you can do it, find and replace using regular expressions to change things, and you can look for specifically the domain, and then just remove it using the regex text replace. Um, I feel like there is other stuff that we added to prevent that from happening, and I forget exactly what it is. Let me look, but yeah, definitely. I mean
It's
that is one of them. And I think there's other. No, I don't want to send it for the newsletter. I hate when clients make me add a.
but I think Mike has a really good point. A lot of times because you're switching between let's say for example live and dev, you don't want to click
Mhm.
a link in dev and then suddenly go to live and you don't know that you're on there and then you make a change thinking you're on dev. So a lot of times you want any of your local links to just be relative to root. So slash whatever. And then it doesn't matter what the domain is. That's the right way to do it, but a lot of people don't realize that that's the right way to do it. So I think that's a training
Mhm.
issue. And you could potentially force the WYSIWYG to strip out if people try to put an absolute link in there.
Yeah, that's what we want to do moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
However, we do have this big issue. So
So I think the module that Mike is talking about will help. I know doing like a massive database search and replace would potentially be destructive because if you're changing config in certain places, that could be bad.
yeah, I was talking to
This
someone.
is the module.
I was talking to someone, or well, not me. Someone at work was talking to someone in Acro Media, and they
Mm-hmm.
are like an agency that does Drupal stuff. And we suggested, oh, maybe we should do a database search and replace, basically. And they said that wasn't we couldn't do that because Drupal serializes data or they
Yeah,
cache data
it,
in
it
some way. I didn't
it
understand.
it's not a blanket sort of approach. Like WordPress actually has a function that you can use for literally that at the command line, um, but Drupal doesn't. It seems. I mean, Drush could probably stand to have something like that. I think that would be wise. But I think Drupal is so expandable that it could very easily miss something that a contrib module or even a custom module provides. Um, Yeah, I think you'd have to walk through entities and things like that. It could potentially get messy. So I think flipping back to best practice is never to use the absolute link, um, and then use tools like what Mike's sharing here. Uh, Now, if you did do a database search and replace, you'd either miss some things, like you said, serialization. You could also miss things, especially if you have like HIPAA compliant things that encrypt data. I mean, why are you including links and encrypted data? I have no idea, but I mean, that just stupid simple examples. But you could also be changing things that aren't content that are config in the database, and that could potentially break things. That would be my fear of doing the raw database search and replace sort of approach. I mean, like I said, you have a dev environment, you can always test things, see how it works, and just really go through the website with a fine tooth comb to see if anything breaks. But it's a dangerous operation to do any raw database changes. Drupal doesn't like it. Plus, because the database is abstracted, it typically likes to use its own mechanisms to do things.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this suggestions, though. I just
Yeah,
realized that Mike is actually one of the maintainers of this module. Wow.
I think that's
I
why he
mean,
knows about it.
that's what I know about it. But that's not what we were using it for. There had to be another way. I mean, there's the link it URL converter. I
Yeah,
mean, I
and
think also like,
sometimes they're fields, not just WYSIWYG editor things. Like the link it module is fantastic in that regard.
you know, I'm trying to think like, I mean, we must be restricting it, and I forget how we are doing that on a couple
Probably
different sites where we have people adding a bunch of random content because I know it is a problem that when we do things on like, a test environment, we don't want to actually get kicked to the live environment.
probably a filter on the WYSIWYG editor side of things.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm just trying to figure out what that would be, and I can't figure it out. Um, yeah. Anyway, it's worth searching for, but I mean, that's if you can't figure out how to keep it from happening, the regex text replacement will help you remove it after the fact.
Yeah, the terminology is an absolute versus a relative URL. So absolute has the whole
Well, I
domain
mean,
at the front,
let's
and that
no, because relative URL means like from the current page. So if you're doing a relative URL and you would go, like dot dot to go down and then like up
yeah.
and like it's relative from the current page. If it's still an absolute URL if it starts with a slash, but it's a oh fuck, I hate there's a term for it about whether the domain is there or not.
Well, the slash is
Oh,
still relative, but it's relative to root.
mm, let me look at what is a what is a relative URL? Let's see what if it explicitly says that. Relative to the current page or domain without including the full URL. So, I mean, yes, it's relative, I guess.
Yeah, slash page is
You know,
considered relative.
okay, okay.
Yeah. There's also the idea of trimming off the protocol, which is an
Well,
interesting one. So instead of putting HTTP colon or HTTPS colon, you just start with a double slash. But that seems to be a really inconsistent sort of implementation. So I don't really see it that much. It basically assumes like it's relative to the protocol sort of thing. So like if you're on a secure connection, it just assumes to add that. Yeah, studying how paths are parsed is interesting. I think take a look at the PHP function for parsing a path, and it will really help break down like all the components to expect. I mean, it's a very useful function by itself. I'm pretty sure JavaScript has a similar one. Yeah, it's PHP parse URL. But I like it because it helps break down what are the actual parts of a URL.
That one?
What's that?
Is it that one that I just put it in the chat?
Yep. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. So you've got the schema like HTTPS or FTP is another common one. But there's a ton of, schema or protocol. The host, of course, that's your domain. Top level domain as well as your regular domain and subdomains. Then you have a port, which a lot of times is the default. So either 80 or 443. But if you're using FTP, then it would be 21. Then you have your, I almost forgot about user and pass. Like you can actually do authentication through the URL too. That's definitely a thing. Again, if you're using FTP, that's a little bit more common. So it's like the user :pass at the domain. Then there's the path, the slash part. There's the query, the question mark in that part. And then there's that fragment, like an anchor tag with the hash mark.
Hmm.
The anatomy of a URL.
See, they don't teach you this in college or anything. They should though.
But this is where W3C comes in. So I'm not going to remotely suggest that you should sit down and read the most boring white paper you've ever read in your life, but it is helpful to at least familiarize yourself with what are in these standards. How do I read these standards? So if I actually have a question like, what can an A tag actually do? You could go read the full breakdown of everything that an A tag can do and what that means and how that's parsed by browsers. Because when a browser engine is built, these are the standards that they are built against. And when they say this browser is compatible with HTML5, blah, 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 that's the standard that it's pointing to. So all the developers behind that browser know to look at that. So whether it's that, or I think they also maintain like JavaScript and ECMA script and stuff like that, but I can't recall. But it's good to take a look at those things. I think the URL structure might actually be a different standard. Yeah, it's RFC. So similar to W3C, RFC is yet another like international standard that helps define things. And this is where a lot of people, like when you're getting into deep development, people start arguing like, what's the max number of characters that the RFC defines for the use of a URL, that sort of thing. And this is where they'll like post a link, like, yeah, it says 255 characters for this part of the URL. And before you also used to have different character encodings too. So I just loaded this up just as a curiosity. And the standard for RFC standard, and similar to like IEEE standards or ISO standards, these are all like numeric sort of things, but they're almost cryptic when you read them. But when you get used to like how they do these write-ups, you kind of get used to how they're written. But yeah, they're talking about like use of ASCII, which is one type of character encoding. So I guess if you're working with Drupal, being familiar with what a character encoding actually is another important thing. So not everything is an ISO Latin character set, because not all languages use that. Like if I'm speaking Chinese or writing Chinese, since that's a different thing than speaking it, or if I'm writing in Russian, those are different character sets entirely. So when, and Arabic, of course, is right to left and stuff, left to right. That's always fun. But they're different character sets, and certain standards will point out what character sets work. This comes into play a lot of times when you're doing things like content migrations, because if you don't pay attention to the character encoding of a database and its tables, you could try to migrate some content. And then all of a sudden you're looking at the results site and you're like, why is all this breaking? Or why does this look really weird? And that might be because the source character set was either set wrong, which is not uncommon. The default one, I think, was a Swedish variation of the ASCII set, or the destination is just different. I feel like a lot of those issues have been worked out over time, but it can result into some really weird issues. But if you're not doing content migrations, then you're not really going to run into that one too much. Another similar one, I think RFC also is the group that defines things like email standards, like how long can a subject line be? How long can an email address be? That sort of thing. And those things do change over time, just like HTML changes over time. It's good to be aware, like if you're doing anything web or internet related, understanding like who defines these things, how often are they updated. RFC does not update much at all by comparison to like HTML and CSS. It basically stays the same. I mean, hell, even IP addresses, IP version 4 versus IP version 6, like the addresses are quite a bit different. I mean, you're talking about having trillions of different addresses. Eventually, IP version 4 just doesn't work at scale. So they came out with a new standard just to try to satisfy that. But these are all the things that you're, at some point in your career, you're going to run against and be like, okay, I just don't know the answer to this. So if you know where to find standards, then it's not so much looking at message forums where people have opinions that are oftentimes wrong. Instead, if you can just go right to the standard and know how to read those documents, then you can get right to the heart of the answer. But arguably, a lot of those things are pretty well known, and somebody, I guess the popular voice may at least stand out and say, hey, yeah, it is limited to 255 characters or something like that. I guess since we're on that subject, since you're working with databases, it's good to also be aware of like, why are these things limited to the numbers that they are, like 255 or 65,000 or something like that. And it's really just base 2 math. Like what are the exponents of the data storage for the type of value that you have? So that way every single email address or every single this thing is sized the same. Like a Boolean variable is just a 1, 0. And then as you scale up, you have integers and you have floats and you have different ways to have to store things of different size. And text is by far one of the most expensive things in a database. Which is why we had the Y2K problem. It was all about trying to save memory. And it's really funny. I'm just really pivoting left and right. It's really funny how much Mike Judge was right about so many freaking things in his movies like Office Space and Idiocracy. It's ridiculous. So Andres, if you have not seen those 2 movies, you owe it to yourself to watch those 2 movies at some point.
I love a version of Idiocracy without the narrator, which is, well, I mean, like I guess it was there for a reason, but like I feel like it wasn't as well
It was like a
planned.
style choice.
Yeah, but I think it was more like things weren't flowing, so they had to add a narrator to tie things together and like properly transition between scenes and to describe the premise of the whole thing.
And
And
Mike Judge is Texan, if I recall correctly. And I feel like there's a little bit of like spaghetti western sort of influence to at least that specific movie. Yeah, those are the movies. Office Space and Idiocracy. I mean, in some respects, they're going to feel dated. And in other respects, they're going to be like, whoa, this is like a dystopian projection from the past talking about our current our current state. It's It's really eerie. But I mean, anybody that's a fan of sci-fi will see like, like 1984, George Orwell predicted a lot of the things that you're observing actively happening right now. It's not a literal like you're not predicting the future. You're just saying if things keep happening in humanity, we can say that this is a likely outcome. At least intelligent people that are paying attention. And I don't think Office Space was so much dystopian as Idiocracy definitely was. But Office Space was more of just a commentary of the drudgery of office work, corporate
And
America, that sort of thing.
I think it captured it's like the moment in time too, where it's like I don't think those things are quite that bad these days. Like I
We
don't know, I feel
shook
like things have
loose.
yeah. I mean, it got TGI Fridays to remove its rule mandating a certain number of flair.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's just
So like
calling it out. But
yeah, so they're
I almost feel like the return to office after COVID is just looking at office space, saying there are a lot of people that want to go back to that, where you have like almost like a caste system, a hierarchy. And don't get me wrong, I don't say that like hierarchy is a bad thing. When you have a large enough organization, hierarchy is a necessity. But the way people treat each other, it's just awful. And it really exemplifies it in corporate America. Which isn't to say that it doesn't exist elsewhere. It's just obviously that's the perspective that Mike Judge was writing from. But yeah, I mean, he did Beavis and Butthead, which is, my youth, and he did King of the Hill, which is, you know, having a resurgence and just kind of just. I like to think of it this way: when people are behaving badly, it's important to have a concept of holding up the mirror, having a way to show people themselves, and art tends to do that in various ways, sometimes aggressively, sometimes very subtly. Um, Satire is a great way of doing that. Comedy is a great way of doing that, and I think that's his flavor. So we've made it all the way through standards and database value sizes and field sizes to Mike Judge movies. It's quite a meetup.
especially since there aren't that many people here.
Yeah.
We should figure out a way to get more people here. It wasn't particularly the only reason I'm here is because I found an old Slack message with the Zoom link that luckily is still the same as it was
Yep.
months ago. Because, I guess I didn't get my personal invitation in the Kalamuna Slack, but we should probably post in some places. I don't know if you posted in the regular Drupal Slack or
Yeah, I'm trying to think of ways to syndicate. I mean, before a lot of people would use like meetup.com or Eventbrite and things like that, especially for in-person meetups, but this isn't in person. So I tried to use Luma because, well, meetup.com costs money and Luma doesn't. And I think that helps, but to your point, that's not marketing, that's like
yeah.
notifications. um, there are a lot of people, not only in the West Coast, that I think would be interested in attending these virtual meetups. But do you have ideas? Is it topic based? Is it just getting the word out? Maybe having some sort of branding for it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to remember to post on Mastodon, and if we just, I mean, it would help to also just have a web page with the event on it, and like, I don't know, because big time Drupal meetup. So the meetup for the old events is still coming up first, and then there's the
What
so I mean, you created the
on
second
Luma?
result, at least that I find, no, on just DuckDuckGo. Like this, you've got this, you created this oh, we have a subscribe for Luma or Google Calendar. Okay, I mean this has some things, but like I wish they had like a thing review. have something like right on this page so someone's looking to it. Like maybe the Zoom link would like help to have it here, but I don't know if that gets
Maybe.
you random people bombing your Zoom.
Yeah, that's the only reason I don't post the Zoom. But I think you do have a good point. Maybe just putting it at the very top of the thing here.
Yeah, just
So if you are subscribed in the Luma thing, then it should like send you reminders every time and all of that, right? To your email.
well, I mean, I don't check my email, so that's the problem with that.
I,
But
I mean,
No,
it
I'm
can. Yeah.
saying because I never got reminders.
hmm.
Like I have to go to each event and then subscribe to the event and say that I'm going to attend, and then I get the reminders.
Here, maybe if
For
I do
example.
this, I just tried to make it easier by saying subscribe for meetup reminders here and just put the Luma link at the literal top of that page.
And does this you might want to specifically mention the fact that it's the what is this? This is the first Wednesday of the month.
Yeah, there you go. Why say that?
Because I just added like a repeating event to my own calendar.
There we go. All right, all right, all right. See, this is how you make improvements. You make assumptions about what to put into place, you put it there, but then you get feedback from people to make improvements. So I got the link and I got the time. And that kind of connects things. So a lot of times I'll have to post these things in so many different places. So there's the D.O place, which if people are looking there, it shows up there, but not everybody looks there. And I guess it's just a matter of just getting this syndicated. Maybe LinkedIn would be another. It's just trying to meet people where they are.
No.
I feel like that's the hard part.
Well, we've got two problems. One, finding new people, and two,
Yeah.
making sure that the people who know about it can easily get to it and easily are reminded of it.
Well, Eric
Uh,
had a good idea. He did some printouts, and every time he would go to like a conference or something like that, he would bring the printouts to let people know about the meetup. So maybe
time.
maybe
Oh,
I could do that.
I'm going to join this channel. I always forget about the Drupal Slack.
Yeah, that's basically where I've been posting like everything. Like, what topic do people want to do? There's a meetup coming up next week, that sort of thing. Maybe I should say that at the very top too.
Mm.
Wait one sec. Mike?
What?
Oh, where are you?
All right, I have to go. I have to go rescue some packages from my sister-in-law's house.
No worries. Thanks for coming in, Mike.
All right, talk to you.
Who are you talking to?
That's great. Zoom meetings are still a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's too bad to see that there are not enough people joining. I remembered my first meeting, there were quite a lot of people. I thought it was gonna continue to be that way.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think I try not to read into things too much. I don't think that it's necessarily because people aren't interested. I
Mm,
think it's because folks have come to a few, and then post summer they get really busy. You know, it's back to school, that sort of thing.
for sure.
So this is me slightly reading into it a little bit. But I have to understand that people have seasonality. That's a factor. But also, to Mike's point, they just don't know. And if they know ahead of time, that would go a long way to helping them feel like they can do something.
Right.
Um, Add, there it is. I'm putting the links up top. Just user improvements, right? That's what we do. Right at the very top. And I repeat it at the bottom. Yeah, I think that's good enough for now. Just updating the page. But I think Eric Wheeler, he's been on a few of these. He's down in the Portland. He's actually in Vancouver, but he works for Stanford, and he did, what was it, web camp for Stanford, and he attends the let's see. Eric also attends the Drupal summit that's here in the Pacific Northwest. And I think there have been a few events that he's brought, like just flyers or whatnot. So maybe that's something that I could bring to the next one just to help drum up interest, and maybe that will help our November attendance.
Is the Pacific Summit going to be? Oh, sorry, give me a sec.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the Zoom moments keep on happening this this meeting. Um, is the Pacific Summit something like, is it virtual or is it in person?
It's in person. It's just outside of Portland this time. So the summit, so a lot of times camps happen in the same place. Like Bad Camp always happens in the same place in San Francisco. Um, the Pacific Northwest Drupal Summit recognized that there are a lot of people that do Drupal in Portland area, Seattle area, and in Vancouver. Like there's a lot of tech people in this general geography, but they didn't want to have just one camp, so it jumps between all three cities every year. So this year is in Portland, last year it was in Seattle, and next year it will be in Vancouver, and it will just continue that cycle over and over again. And it's the same group of people that help run it a lot of times. A lot of times we get sponsorships that are both local and in the general Drupal community. But it's about maybe 70 people. So it's a good amount of
Yeah.
locals, and it tends to be locals that lean a little bit in terms of like the city that they're in.
Right. Yeah, I'll definitely be interested in going at least to the Vancouver one.
Yeah,
I'm not comfortable going to the United States right now, but yeah, the Vancouver for sure. I would love that.
I don't blame you. I'm not bringing anything but a burner phone with me to the United States. So
Yeah.
that should be a very interesting thing. But given some of the recent, like I didn't know, like Trump just announced the whole like thing with like deploying the military in Portland after I'd already
Oh
booked my flights.
God.
So yeah, it's getting absurd. Um,
Yeah.
and it's getting scary. So I think after this, I might abstain from going to the U.S. for the next few years, unless it's something that's absolutely necessary. I'm a U.S. citizen, and thankfully, I'm a permanent resident here, and I don't have to leave. So that helps. But yeah, it's awkward coming from that perspective, and I mean, it's tempting to go to things like DrupalCon in Chicago and stuff like that, but given how things are going, it's a safety concern. Like if I were
Right.
already in the United States, so that would be actually a lot easier to do. But even if I still lived in Baltimore, which is where I used to live 3 years ago for 30 years, um, traveling to Portland is a lot, and even getting on an airplane is a lot.
Mm,
Like if I could drive or do something else, that would probably feel a little bit more safe right now. Um,
for sure.
Thankfully, there are some things related to Drupal that are in Canada. Like Evolving Web does a lot of things both in Toronto and in Vancouver. Um, there's also some non-Drupal stuff to keep on your radar. So Web Summit is something that I think happens in the spring. Um, it I think it's good to get outside of Drupal every now and again and just into the general tech or general web space. So it's one to consider, especially early in your career. I always tell people this, like if you're early in your career, networking is essential. I mean, I'd argue it's essential throughout your career, but it's most essential at the very beginning because you're creating brand new relationships
Mm,
when you don't have nearly as many as other people do. Like sometimes if you have so many relationships that you can kind of just nurture them from afar, maybe you can get away with not going to an event here and there. But when you're early on, it's really good to forge those new relationships because this can mean the difference between employment or opportunities or just mentorship or some other sort of prop that helps your career and professional development. So for me, it was also things like going to UX meetups. So things that were still tech, but weren't so much focused on development. They were more design focused. So I
mm,
found the things that really piqued my interest. I also do things related to accessibility, and I do things outside of just tech as well. I've joined the local chamber of commerce just to kind of connect with local businesses
mhm.
because I feel like it's important just to have some sort of social professional aspect. And you have to budget it. So you can't just do all the things because they're there, but you can't do nothing. So you have to find what balance actually makes sense in your personal life um, to help nurture those relationships and develop new ones.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
I do want to make this into that much more because it means that you don't have to travel to do it.
right, right. No, and I am very thankful for this meetup. Like it has
Yeah.
given me networking opportunity, and I'm in the Okanagan, right? There are not a lot of people
Yeah.
that do Drupal here, so like it's very nice to talk to people that know about the struggle of Drupal and all of this stuff, and are uh like Andrew said the other day, like in love.
Yeah. Yeah. You,
So
you,
it's good.
you get really passionate about it. And there are also people that kind of just fall out of it because they find other solutions like I'm a React developer now, or I'm a Vue developer now, or I just abandon it completely.
For
Um,
sure.
there are a few Drupal folks in Okanagan. I don't know if they do meetups though. Like I know there are a few ImageX folks that are there. There are probably a few like Acromedia. There are probably a few like North. I'm trying to remember all the different folks who are just around this local region. But yeah, I think it might be good to do just kind of an agency exploration and also take a look at larger institutions that use Drupal. A lot of times there'll be education, healthcare, municipal sort
Mm.
of organizations. And once you kind of get a lay of the land, then you'll find the Drupal developers and where they exist. And if there's not something local to you, feel free to organize one yourself and see if people come along. It doesn't hurt, even if you don't know too much about it. Just putting forth the effort to organize things. A lot of times, people go to bars or libraries or other sort of common spaces where that's an okay place to congregate.
Mhm.
But yeah, coffee shops. But yeah, I do appreciate your participating in this. I think it's important to help your journey and your comfort level with doing Drupal. And don't ever be shy about saying, hey, I have a problem or I don't understand this thing. There's going to be like at least five or more people that are ready to help you, like in a moment's notice.
Yeah, that's what I love about Drupal. People like you guys are so nice. I don't understand why. Like it's just weird. But I mean, it's weird in a very good way. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm that way too. So it's good. And I don't like I do feel a bit shy sometimes, like trying to even talking here, because I don't want to hijack the
Yeah.
conversation. I don't want to just be needy and say, "Oh, I don't understand this and this." Like I do try to do things on my own, right? But I, like you said, like there's a lot of the standards, there's a lot of things, and you guys have like a wealth of experience, and know how to navigate about this vast. Technology, right? I am just starting, so I do feel bad.
Well, I don't don't feel bad in the sense that you are where you are. Um, we all were there at one point, that sort of thing. And I think at some point you will be so comfortable with it that you will feel compelled to help others that much more because it's like the knowledge that's just bursting from your head.
Hmm.
You see somebody struggling and you kind of care as long as you have the time to budget for it. And I think that's what it all comes down to for all of us is if you uh, this is going to seem like a tangent, and I always do tangents. I worked with a guy. I worked a tech support job, and he was convinced that if he documented his job, he would be useless. And I looked at him. I'm like, you do realize that if you resist any request to document what it is that you do, that you will prove that you're useless. That if you are not voluntarily trying to document what you're doing, that you won't have a job. And sure enough, within a year, he was gone. But I find that people who are more willing to share knowledge, it's not that people are going to steal your ideas. That is not aside from not being very compatible with open source. I remember somebody that was really fixated on intellectual property. And they said, you know what? I've spent an entire career getting to this point where I have an idea for a product. If somebody else took my idea and was able to make it faster than I can, you know what? Let them have it. Just let them have it because it is hard enough to actually manufacture products, whether virtual or physical. It's hard enough to invest in those things that honestly, I'm not even really worried about it. If it makes the world a better place, then so be it. There's so many ideas that a person can have that you're never going to have time to execute on those things. Why are you going to hoard them all to yourself?
Hmm.
And I feel like knowledge and experience are the exact same thing in that why are you going to keep it to yourself? It took you for, so this is the delineation that I like. Knowledge is something that you can read in a book. You can go read how to write HTML. You can read how to use CSS. And some of that's going to be somebody's opinion. Some of it's going to be literally here are the commands. But it's your experience that teaches you here's a way that works really well for certain scenarios and it's really terrible in other scenarios. And that takes practice. Like you have to have weathered those storms. So when somebody shares their experience, it's not about them being right or wrong. It's about them trying to save you the suffering. Because I like to fashion it, because I'm so self-taught. I like to fashion it as trial and error learning is 10 times more expensive than having somebody guide you.
Hmm.
So if like you had to go learn all of this stuff on your own, you're going to make tons of mistakes and you're going to arrive pretty close to the same point as somebody else who is groomed and mentored up to that point. In any other industry, if I wanted to be a welder, there are apprenticeship programs, people to help you navigate the difficulties of doing a thing and saying, look, you can go ahead and mess it up. Go figure out what messing it up feels like. I'm going to show you what I've learned over time. This helps a little bit. You're not going to have as much fatigue. You're not going to have as much anguish. It's going to be faster. It's going to be safer. Whatever the value you get out of doing it that way, this person has gotten to that point and they're willing to show you their math. But knowledge sharing is experience sharing. It's just condensed and condensed and condensed over the course of time. And it's impressive to see how humanity has amassed so much knowledge through experience. So you're going to have your experiences. And because you're in technology, that technology will change significantly year over year. By the time you feel comfortable, it won't look anything like where you started, but you will be prepared to help somebody get their start.
Hmm.
And I also love seeing people in leadership positions get to that point and being able to pass the torch with honor and respect, being able to very graciously say, I I don't have to be this. This is not mine. This is not an ego thing. This is something that I can share because it should be shared.
Right.
So it's not the I'm better than you because I've been doing this longer. That seniority mentality is just bunk. It's just so bad. Eventually I'm going to hardly be able to move and I'm going to need help. I mean, we're all going to be there if we're so lucky. So
Yeah.
I think it's treat everybody with kindness, understand that everybody is a human that draws the same breath, and we all have our own interests and our own needs. And if we help each other, everybody benefits. And that really should be the spirit of a meetup. So if you need help, raise your hand, especially if no one's talking, or if you have something that you need from the community. I learned this so many times in my career. People don't know that you need help unless you tell them what sort of help you need. And it's okay if they don't have the time to help you. That's a different sort of problem.
Right.
But they won't have the opportunity to help you unless you tell them where you need help. And I think it takes courage to ask for help. But the more of that courage that you muster on a frequent basis, the faster you go and the more you connect with people. And eventually you're the one helping, sometimes even the same person that helped you.
Hmm.
But with that in mind, is there anything that is bothering you or being a challenge that you feel like is like, for the next month, this would be really hard if I had to do this on my own?
Um, Not really. I mustered the courage to ask about the two things. I even wrote them down, the accessibility thing, because this is something that I feel is very important. And I work at the Okanagan College, which is a public institution. And it is amazing that we do not have accessibility first in mind. Like that is just incredible. And I didn't know about accessibility before. Like the college, I went to the Okanagan College to learn about this, so it's their fault, but it doesn't matter. Um, so it is just incredible to me that a public institution doesn't care about people, and I want to change that. And I am very passionate about this. So the accessibility thing is something that really interests me. I am definitely going to take a look into that and take a look at the course that you sent.
Yeah.
And the other thing was that hard-coded links stuff. Um, I have to take a look at that module. But the other thing that I was just thinking on is that you made a great point about moving away from Drupal from a bit, because yeah, Drupal is not everything. Um, I have been starting to read a book called Eloquent JavaScript.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I just somebody recommended that book in a YouTube video because I know like I know my strengths and I know where I lack knowledge, and I'm good at JavaScript, but I know React and I use this as crutches, right? So I don't know and this bugs me a lot. Like I don't know what's happening beneath, like what's happening on the like on underlying, the
Yeah.
React stuff and whatever things I do. So I said I need to learn vanilla JavaScript. Like I cannot be going around in the world just building stuff in Drupal and stuff and just glossing over uh the JavaScript
Fundamentals.
stuff. Yeah, the
It's
fundamentals. That's it. That's the
yeah.
word I wanted to say. Yeah.
So my wife, she actually has a background in, well, she got a degree in photography, a visual communication major, and she changed careers a few times. Eventually, she was a project manager for a while, and she wanted to break into something that was more fulfilling. I have a friend that does user experience research and design. So not visual design, but it's more like, let's test how effective this navigation is for a group of students to complete this task. I mean, that's classic user experience testing and design. But she didn't know how to get into these fields, and she was very interested. And with her visual communications background, she was interested. I said, look, you know what? This is going to be boring. You may not want to be a programmer, but if you want to do anything on the web, there's 3 things that anyone working on the web should at least have exposure to: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And it's not about knowing it after you learn it. It's not about even using it. It's just about having exposure to it, so that if later on you have a problem, let's say you're troubleshooting a problem with an HTML form for a hospital or something like that, it's not about you fixing the problem. It's about you knowing that that problem has something to do with the CSS styling. Maybe it's just doing something wonky, or maybe there's a JavaScript error. You at least know where to look for that, and you can say, hey, this needs some help. But it's kind of like playing a sport where you have the ball, you're trying to move the ball, you are responsible at that point. The more you know how to do with that, the more you can actually hold that responsibility. So I think it's good that you are looking into JavaScript and its fundamentals. I think a lot of people who are interested in technology are going to, similar to like how you want to grab the calculator before learning arithmetic. Like the teacher wants you to know how arithmetic works, not for memorization purposes, but so you at least understand that when you're using the calculator, this is what's happening. So AI is becoming that calculator right now. If you know that I want to change all divs that have this CSS class to have a red background, I can do that with JavaScript. How do I do that with JavaScript? If you had to do that with JavaScript, and you didn't know how, that'd be a lot of learning. But if you've already had that exposure, you know where to start. And there's a lot of things in any, so I like to look at the traditional definition of CSS and JavaScript. They are not languages because they're not something that are going to process things. JavaScript is a language in the sense that it runs functions and things like that, whereas HTML is a markup. It's a way of saying this is how something's structured. So here's the header, here's the body, here's the footer of the page, and how are we structuring that? Where's the navigation? What am I considering to be heading on the page? So there's tags for all of that. But it's not doing anything. It's just saying what something is. It's no different than if I open a Word document and that's how it looks. Why does it look like that way? Because there's actually code in the background that's written to say that's how it looks. But it doesn't change anything. It's remarkable what people can do these days with CSS and even SVG, scalable vector graphics. Another tangent. But I think fundamentals are still really important because it gives you a stronger foothold to be able to deal with things. It's sort of like I look at Drupal because everybody who loves Drupal likes to grab that hammer and go looking for nails. It's like, I can do this with Drupal. It's like, but should you do this with Drupal? Would React be a more appropriate thing? Would an Objective-C mobile app be a more appropriate thing? Would a Java app for Android be a more appropriate thing? And the question that I always boil things down to, so you work for a college. The question I always ask first is, who is this for? How are we serving them? Because that's what we're all doing. We are in service when we're talking about technology. It serves human beings.
Yeah.
Who are those human beings? And there's 2 sides of that. There's a Venn diagram that I always have in my head. And if I don't understand that Venn diagram, that's where I start. So first is the organization. So in your case, it's a college. That's your organization. That organization has a purpose. What is that purpose? And you define that purpose. Okay, so that purpose is to educate students. It has to employ teachers and staff and faculty and whatnot. It may have a physical presence. It may have an online presence. Who's the audience? Who do they serve? So that, in the case of technology, is your user base. But using the word audience is an appropriate term. Users gets a little sterile, cold. It disconnects. It feels like a consumer, and that's not necessarily the case. I feel like audience is more. I used to work in a movie theater. It's more the entertainment side of things. It's more like you are in service of something. So what are their needs? What do they want? So in the case of a college, they want an education, or they want to look for financial aid, or they want to join a sports program, but they have wants. Or maybe they're a parent that also wants, but there's a shift in purpose and intention and need when you change these audience segments. So defining the audience segment and defining the needs of each of those audience segments. Again, this is a combination of business analysis and user experience work. But everybody can do this. Everybody should do this because it gives you purpose. It lets you understand what problem, as a developer, as a designer, as a project manager, what problem are you solving? How do you bring value to the team, to the solution, whatever it is? At no point have I said Drupal. At no point. So technology is in service of humans, humans that have something to give and humans that need something. And when we understand that, then we can have the conversation of what solution's appropriate. Sometimes that solution's already picked for us. So Drupal, okay, it's an information portal. Maybe it tells you what financial aid options are. Maybe it has a department for physics. Maybe it has web pages for sporting events and teams that you can join and things like that. So Drupal is simply a medium, a mechanism to convey that information, to act, to sign up for a thing, to apply for a thing, to learn a course or whatever. So when we approach things from that standpoint, all of a sudden, having that purpose in mind, we can then laser focus on priority. So priority is a combination of two things: importance, which can be measured, it can be quantified, and urgency. Do I need this now? If you don't need it now, it's not a high priority. So there are 4 quadrants behind that. This comes from a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You don't have to read it, kind of a hokey sort of book, but it still does illustrate the fact that a lot of times people think priority is about their emotional reaction to something. Take your emotions and think of them more as indicators of something, not necessarily the truth. Because as a developer, I might say, oh my God, this code is just such a mess. This is the most urgent and important thing. Maybe it's not. Does it function? Is it breaking? Does it pose a risk? Maybe updating to the latest version of PHP is truly the more important thing because of valid reasons. And I say that because it's important to understand that all of us have a different perspective and something that we bring to the table, but we have to see all the puzzle pieces on the table to understand what we need to be doing together as a team. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about working together to say, how do we collectively define priorities and work towards a common goal of helping humans? In this case, with technology. In this case, a lot of times with Drupal. So I think as you're navigating fundamentals, as you're navigating what Drupal can do, as you're navigating practices like accessibility, always think of the human element in the back of your mind. These are all just simply the tools that we currently have available, and they can change. If I'm an auto mechanic, I'm going to learn how to turn a wrench, and I'm going to learn how to use a jack and levers and different things like that. I'm going to learn a lot of these fundamentals, and I'm going to do things wrong. I might use the wrong oil. I might use the wrong lubricant. I might use the wrong socket for a thing, but eventually I'll learn the right way to do it, or somebody will show me. And I think that's what we can do here with each other. I think that's what you can do with your own curiosity by exploring things like the fundamentals and the standards, like you said. But having self-taught, I can tell you there is always more that you will never know than you will know. So you need to find your own priorities for what you need immediately. So a sense of urgency. And also what sparks your curiosity. So there's no urgency necessarily in that, but that's delight. This is something that makes you feel value as a human. This is something that makes you feel motivation to do what you do. And each of us find a different version of drive. So that is another good book by Daniel Pink. It's called Drive. It's about finding your own inner motivation. And these are not all books that I read are leadership books, and I wouldn't call this that. But it is a way of not only helping to motivate yourself, but if you work with teams, how to motivate other people. People are not lazy; they're unmotivated. They're not being tapped into for what their interests are. So if I said, you know what, what's going on in your personal life, without prying into something that's too much information or something like that, but if something's bothering you, then that's going to distract you from your ability to do something as a team. So having a general interest in other people, socializing, connecting with people, I think is a really important thing. But also understanding what motivates people. That's really it. So like maybe I have a dying grandmother or something like that. That can really hurt a lot of my ability to stay connected. But if I said, if I were your manager, I could say, well, you know what? I think it's really responsible for me to say that's an important aspect of your life is spending time with your grandma before she's gone. So how about you work a little bit longer on Mondays and Tuesdays and you get Friday off? And I think effective managers are capable of recognizing those sort of things, but it requires communication to get there. Sometimes it's volunteered, sometimes it's requested information, but that's a good relationship. But then also finding out, like, if you're interested in working with Drupal integrations, oh, well, that's great. Well, we have a project that needs to be done and nobody wants to do it. Let's put that on your plate at some point. And I think finding those opportunities for things that need to be done and appropriate people to do them, making those, matchmaking, making those connections is really important too.
Definitely.
So I think you spoke about Andrew earlier. He was one of the several people, Pavlos it was another, that worked with me and a few of the people that did the Vancouver Drupal meetup. I hoped that while being on the Sunshine Coast here, which is truly really remote, that I'd be able to get a little bit more connected there. And we talked about maybe doing something with Vancouver Island, doing something with Okanagan. That I don't think that ever really took off because I don't think there was enough interest. But I think there may still be something that we could do to drum up interest, not only from people who do Drupal in this geography, but also with a lot of the companies or whatnot. Maybe find our own event. I know that the Pacific Northwest Drupal Summit next year, so next fall, will be in Vancouver. So if that's something that you're interested in helping with, I know the people that run it, so I can get you connected with them. But I think even trying to find other opportunities for something more recurring in the Vancouver, the Okanagan, and the Vancouver Island areas, because those are where the major populations are, might be something that we could consider doing.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be more than interested. I'm excited about it, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So now we're getting close on time. Is there anything else that you want to talk about before we break?
No, it's all good. I don't want to get more of your time.
Oh, no worries. That's why I'm here. Well, it's good seeing you. I hope to see you in November. If you have ideas for our next meetup, don't hesitate to say, "Hey, I'd love to talk about this," or if there are other folks that you think you'd like to bring in, just let them know. The Slack channel is really where I'm doing a lot of the conversing about what to do for the meetup. But I think to Mike's point, we need to try to find more people.
Hmm. Okay. I have a couple of persons in mind. I'll invite them.
Yeah. And if they don't want to come, that's okay. But just awareness, I think, is the thing.
Perfect.
Cool. Well, good
All
seeing
right.
you, and hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, likewise.
All right.
Okay,
Take care, bud.
bye.